He was holding the kettle when I knew something in him had snapped. I had my daughter, Nia, in my arms, her warm little body pressed against my chest, when my husband stepped out of our kitchen in Center City, Philadelphia with steam rising from his hand. Behind him, the floor-to-ceiling windows showed the skyline, calm and beautiful, like nothing bad could ever happen up here on the 23rd floor. Beside him stood his mother, Loretta. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shocked. She was satisfied. "Teach her some respect, son," she said quietly. "If you've ever loved someone who later became the person you feared most in the room, you already know what came next." Marcus lifted the kettle higher. I remember every detail in strange, sharp pieces. The sound of Nia starting to fuss. The shine of stainless steel under the kitchen lights. The way my bare feet stuck to the cool hardwood as I instinctively turned my back, trying to shield my baby. "Marcus," I said. "Don't. Please. Put it down." He didn't. The water hit my back first. There is no way to explain that kind of pain to someone who hasn't felt it. It was white, bright, total. My body lit up with it. I heard someone screaming and needed a second to realize it was me. Nia shrieked in my arms, but she was dry. I had twisted just enough. The water ran down my spine, my left arm, my side. The skin felt like it was being peeled off in slow motion. I dropped to my knees, still holding my baby. My vision blurred. My breath came in short, ugly gasps. Above me, Marcus froze, kettle still in his hand, his face suddenly empty, like he had just woken up inside his own body. "Oh God," he whispered. "Danielle, I didn't mean." I looked past him. Loretta wasn't smiling anymore, but there was something in her eyes. Not horror, not regret. Something closer to victory. "Stop being so dramatic," she said. "If you are listening to this and your first thought is, 'How did it ever get this bad?' stay with me. Because it didn't start here. It never does. My name is Danielle Morgan. I'm 40 years old, a mother, a marketing consultant, and a burn survivor. 2 years ago, I thought I had married the love of my life. Today, that man has a felony record for what he did to me in this apartment. And his mother? Let's just say there's a reason I'm telling this story publicly. If you've ever been called too sensitive, too emotional, or overreacting, this story is for you. If you've ever second-guessed your own instincts because someone you love told you you're imagining things, this story is for you too. Before I tell you how I ended up on that floor with boiling water on my back, I need to go back to when everything still looked perfect from the outside. We rewind to the year before. Same apartment, same city, same man. On paper, my life looked good. I lived in a glass and concrete box over downtown Philadelphia, close enough to Rittenhouse Square that on summer nights I could hear music from the park when I opened the balcony door. I had spent 15 years climbing my way up in marketing, from overworked assistant to senior manager. I had my own savings, my own car, my own name on the lease, well, at least for a while. And then there was Marcus Caldwell. Marcus was the kind of man people liked immediately. Tall, neat, always in a well-cut suit from some Center City men's store. A partner-track attorney at a respected firm. He listened when people spoke. He made eye contact. He remembered your sister's name, your dog's name, your favorite wine. When we started dating, my friends said things like, "Finally, a grown man." And "Girl, don't mess this up." He told me early on that his mother had raised him alone in West Philly, working 2 jobs, sometimes 3. "She did everything for me," he would say. "Everything I am, I owe to her." I heard that story so many times I could have told it for him. The nights Loretta came home from the hospital, still in her scrubs, and helped him with homework. The weekends she took extra shifts so he could go to debate camp. The scholarships. The pride when he walked across the stage at law school graduation. At first, I thought it was sweet. A black man who loved his mother, respected her sacrifices, lifted her up whenever he could. In our community, that's not nothing. Later, I would realize there's a difference between loving your mother and never cutting the cord. But at the beginning, I only saw the best parts. We got married on a mild October afternoon in a small garden venue outside the city, not far from Fairmount Park. The leaves had just started to turn. My dress was simple and elegant. I walked down the aisle toward Marcus, with my heart beating so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. And then I saw her. Loretta Caldwell, mother of the groom, in a long, shimmering dress that was white. Not champagne. Not cream. White. As white as my own gown under the fall sunlight. I felt my stomach flip. My sister, Tasha, leaned in from the front row and whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "Danny, is your mother-in-law wearing white to your wedding?" For a second, the whole scene went soft around the edges. Guests, flowers, the minister, everything blurred except Loretta's dress. She smiled at me, wide and bright, and lifted her phone to record me walking past her, like she was starring in the show. I laughed. What else was I supposed to do? "It's fine," I whispered back to Tasha. "It's probably just cream. She's old school. Let it go." I told myself it was a misunderstanding, a generational thing, an anti-fashion choice. I pushed the discomfort down and smiled for the photographer. Because that's what women do, right? We swallow the first small wrongness so we don't make a scene. Standing there with Marcus' hands wrapped around mine, I thought the only drama I'd ever face with Loretta would be over recipes and holiday plans. I had no idea that one day, the same woman in that white dress would stand in my living room and tell her son to teach me some respect, while he held a boiling kettle. Back then, I saw Marcus through soft light. He made me coffee in the mornings. He showed up to my big presentations with flowers. On hard days, he brought takeout and listened to me rant about clients. When we talked about the future, it was always we will buy a bigger place. Well travel. Well have a baby. I was 38 when we really started talking about that baby. I could hear the clock ticking. Not in some dramatic movie way, but in the very practical way of a woman who knows her body, her age, and the medical statistics. Marcus wanted to wait. "Let's enjoy being just us for a little longer," he said. "We've got time." I nodded like I agreed. But at night, lying awake in that apartment above the city, I would rest my hand on my belly and wonder if time was something I could afford to sit around and wait on. The day I saw 2 pink lines on that stick in our bathroom, everything shifted. Fear, joy, panic, hope, they all arrived at once. I had spent my 20s proving I could take care of myself. Now, at 39, I wanted someone else to take care of. Someone who would call me mom. If you're still with me, this is where the story really starts to bend. Because pregnancy didn't fix anything. It just turned up the volume. In the next part, I'll tell you about the night my water broke 5 weeks early, the NICU at Liberty General Hospital, and the first time a doctor warned me that even a little cigarette smoke could put my tiny baby in real danger. If you're a mom, a dad, a grandparent, or just someone who's ever loved a child, I want you to hear that part. So stay with me, and before we go on, let me know in the comments where you're listening from: Philly, Atlanta, Houston, somewhere else, because this might be my story, but I promise you, pieces of it belong to a lot of us. My water broke on a Thursday night in July. I was standing at the kitchen counter in our apartment above downtown Philadelphia, halfway through a bowl of takeout pad thai, when I felt a sharp tightening in my belly and then warmth. Not the gentle, "Oh, that's a Braxton Hicks" kind of pressure I'd been warned about. This was different. Immediate. Heavy. I looked down and saw the wet spot spreading on my leggings. "Marcus?" My voice sounded small, even to me. He came out of the home office, still on his Bluetooth headset, talking about a brief or a deposition or something that felt 100 miles away from my body at that moment. His eyes dropped to my legs. His face went pale. "Hey, I gotta go," he told whoever was on the other end. "My wife's in labor." "Yeah. Now." The next hour was a blur of towels, elevators, traffic lights, and that particular fluorescent glow of an emergency room at night. Liberty General Hospital was only 15 minutes from our building, but it felt much longer. I was 35 weeks. I knew the number like a grade on a test. Close, but not quite where you want to be. They wheeled me upstairs. Nurses moved quickly but calmly, calling out numbers and terms I only half understood. Someone strapped monitors across my belly. Another checked my blood pressure. A doctor I'd never met before came in and introduced herself as Dr. Regina Thompson. "Danielle. I'm Dr. Thompson," she said, looking me right in the eye, one hand already on the fetal monitor. "Your water has broken early, and your baby isn't tolerating contractions very well. Her heart rate is dipping. We're going to need to do a C-section tonight. Tonight? I repeated, like there was an option for next week. Within the hour, she said. I know this is scary, but we do this every day. Well, take good care of you and your baby. Okay? I nodded because I couldn't think of any other response that made sense. Surgery is a strange thing. 1 minute you're in a bright operating room, freezing under those big lights, listening to people talk over your body like you're a table. The next minute there's pressure, tugging, a feeling like something is being rearranged inside your bones, and then a cry. It wasn't loud. It wasn't the big healthy wail I'd imagined. It was more like a thin, protesting sound, like a kitten that had been woken up too soon. That's your daughter, someone said. There she is. I didn't get to hold her right away. I saw a flash of her tiny, reddish, covered in vernix, and then she was carried over to a warmer across the room. A team of people gathered around her. I stared up at the ceiling, tears running sideways into my hair, and whispered, "Please, please, please," to no one in particular. Later, in the NICU, I met her properly. Her name was already chosen. Nia. It means purpose. And somehow that felt right even before I saw her. She weighed 4 pounds and some ounces. All of it fighting. There were wires taped to her chest, a tube under her nose, a monitor that chirped every time her tiny lungs decided to forget their job. I put my hand through the porthole of the incubator and touched her foot with one finger. It was no bigger than the pad of my thumb. "I'm your mom," I said. "And I'm going to get this right, even if I didn't get the timing right." That first night, Dr. Thompson stood by Nia's incubator and talked us through what to expect. Marcus was there, hovering just behind me, hands in his pockets, the way he always stood in court when he wanted to look composed. "Premature babies often have sensitive lungs," Dr. Thompson said. "Nia's doing as well as we can hope for right now, but her airways are delicate. Think of them like very thin straws. They can get inflamed easily. What do we need to do?" I asked. "You need to be obsessive about her environment," she said simply. "No cigarette smoke. None. Not outside the door, not on the balcony, not on your clothes. No heavy perfumes, no harsh cleaning chemicals. Her lungs are going to need time to grow and strengthen. Anything that irritates them could cause serious breathing problems." She said it calmly, like a checklist. To me, it sounded like holy scripture. I nodded so hard my neck hurt. Marcus nodded too, but his eyes had already drifted back to his phone, where emails were still coming in. 2 weeks later, Nia came home. We walked into our 23rd floor apartment with this tiny person in a car seat that looked like it was going to swallow her whole. I had a stack of discharge instructions, enough hospital-grade hand sanitizer to open a store, and a brain that had turned into a loop of Dr. Thompson's words. No smoke, no perfume, no chemicals. I washed my hands so often they cracked. I stopped wearing the one expensive perfume I loved. I switched our laundry detergent to a fragrance-free brand that smelled like absolutely nothing. Every time Marcus came home from work, I met him at the door with a bottle of sanitizer and a reminder to change his shirt. "Babe, it's fine," he would say, smiling, but still doing it. "You'd make a great forensic investigator. You know that?" I didn't care if I sounded crazy. My baby had come home on oxygen for the first 3 days. I had listened to machines breathe for her. I was not going to gamble with her lungs. For a little while, we found a rhythm. Feedings, diaper changes, naps that never lasted as long as the books promised. Marcus took late-night calls from the living room, his voice a low murmur behind the closed bedroom door. I paced the apartment with Nia in my arms, counting her breaths, waiting for my body to stop hurting. And then Marcus came home one evening in August, loosened his tie, and said, like it was nothing, "Mom's coming up from West Philly to stay with us for a few weeks. She wants to help with the baby." I felt it in my stomach before my brain caught up a small, hard knot. "How long is a few weeks?" I asked. "I don't know. A month?" "She's excited to be a grandma. She took time off work for this. It'll be good to have an extra pair of hands, right?" On paper, he wasn't wrong. I was exhausted. I was still healing from the C-section. I could barely lift the stroller, much less carry groceries. but the memory of that white dress at my wedding flickered in my mind like a warning light. "Ill. Try to be my best self," I said finally. He laughed and kissed my forehead. "You'll be great. She loves you." Loretta arrived on a Tuesday afternoon with 3 suitcases, a leopard print weekender bag, and a cardboard carton of Virginia Slims tucked under her arm like a purse. I saw it when she set her bags down in the guest room. 12 neat packs of cigarettes lined up in rows, the familiar white and gold design staring back at me. My heart started to race. "Hey, Loretta," I said carefully. "Before you get settled, I just want to remind you. Nia's lungs are really sensitive." The NICU doctor was very clear: no smoke. At all. Not even on the balcony. Loretta turned to look at me with a smile I'd once thought was warm. Now, up close, I could see how practiced it was. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, dragging out the word. "I'm not going to smoke around the baby. I'll go out on the balcony. It's fine. Don't worry so much." Her tone made it sound like I'd asked if she planned to juggle knives over the crib. "It's just, the doctor said even trace amounts can be a problem." I tried again. "If it gets on your clothes, or in your hair, I raised a son just fine. Remember?" she said lightly. "He turned out healthy. A little bit of smoke outside never killed anybody. You young people read too much internet." Marcus walked in just in time to hear that and chuckled. "You know how she is, Mom. She's read every article, every blog." They shared a look that I didn't like at all. If you've never been in a position where you're outnumbered in your own home, let me tell you what it feels like. It feels like suddenly the ground under your feet belongs to someone else. The air in your lungs belongs to someone else. You're there, but you're also not. I told myself to pick my battles. I told myself it would only be a month. The first few days, Loretta did smoke on the balcony. I could smell it when she slid the glass door open, the smoke curling in around the edges as she stood just outside in her housecoat and slippers. I would scoop Nia up and move farther into the apartment. Close doors. Turn on the air purifier, feel my chest tighten anyway. "Could you maybe stand a little farther out?" I asked her one afternoon. "The air pulls the smoke back in." She rolled her eyes. "You can't smell that from in there. Danielle. Don't be ridiculous. The baby is fine." Every time I pushed, she pushed back harder. Every time I tried to enforce what Dr. Thompson had told me, I ended up being made to feel like the overprotective, hysterical new mom. Marcus? He stayed in the middle, which really meant he stayed on his mother's side. "Mom said she's smoking outside," he said one night when I showed him the faint smell in the hallway. "The doctor said no smoking in the house. She's following the rules. You have to stop making everything a crisis." "She was on oxygen, Marcus," I said. "She was in an incubator. And now she's not," he snapped. "You're exhausted, you're hormonal. You're reading danger into everything." The worst part wasn't that he said it. The worst part was that a tiny piece of me believed it. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was traumatized from the NICU. Maybe I was seeing smoke where there wasn't any. But then, I started finding things. A cigarette butt in the kitchen trash can under the coffee grounds. Another one in the bathroom trash wrapped in tissue. Ash in a mug on the balcony table that hadn't been there an hour before. Little ghosts of a habit that was supposed to be confined to the open air. When I asked Loretta about it, her face went cold. "Are you accusing me of lying?" she asked. "I'm asking you if you smoked inside," I said. "That's all." "Maybe it's the neighbors," she said. "New mothers get paranoid. It's very common." The word paranoid stuck to my skin like something sticky. I wish I could tell you I left the next day. I didn't. What I did was stay. What I did was keep trying to make it work. What I did was keep choosing peace over my own instincts. Until the night at 2 in the morning when Nia woke up making a sound I will never forget. It wasn't crying. Crying I could handle. This was a harsh, rasping, wheezing noise, like every breath was a fight. I flipped on the light and saw her chest pulling in hard between her ribs, her tiny lips starting to tint blue at the edges. "Marcus!" I shouted. "Marcus! Call 911. The ride back to Liberty General felt like a nightmare it already had once. Only this time I knew exactly how bad it could get. They rushed us into the pediatric ER. Oxygen mask. X-rays. Steroid treatments. machines beeping in a new rhythm of terror. Dr. Thompson was called in again. Hair pulled back, eyes sharp even at 4 in the morning. Has she been exposed to smoke? She asked, looking from Marcus to me. No, Marcus said instantly. No one smokes in our home. The room went so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. I need you to be honest with me, Dr. Thompson said. Because what I'm seeing in her lungs is consistent with secondhand smoke exposure. With a baby like Nia, even a small amount can trigger this kind of attack. I looked at Marcus. He looked at me. And in that moment, with my daughter struggling to breathe a few feet away, I knew two things at once. That Loretta had never really stopped putting smoke into our air, and that the people who were supposed to stand between Nia and harm were not going to do it. I was going to have to do it myself. In the next part of this story, I'm going to tell you what happened when I stopped trying to argue with people who didn't want to hear me, and started collecting proof instead. If you've ever felt like your words weren't enough, you'll want to hear that part. I found out the hard way that sometimes words really aren't enough. After that second ER trip, after watching Nia fight for every breath under that tiny oxygen mask, I stopped trying to convince anyone of anything. I listened to Dr. Thompson talk about inflamed airways and triggered attacks, and something inside me clicked into place. Secondhand smoke can be deadly for a baby like Nia, she said, her voice firm but not unkind. You can't afford to be casual about this. Not one bit. I nodded, because I agreed with her. But agreeing and being heard are two very different things. When we went back home, Loretta behaved for exactly 48 hours. She sat farther from the balcony door. She used breath mints. She sprayed way too much cheap perfume on herself, like she was trying to drown something out. Marcus was gentler with me for a few days too. He tucked me into bed, told me he was sorry for snapping, told me we were all stressed. Then, right on schedule, it went back to the way it had been. I smelled smoke where smoke wasn't supposed to be. I found one more butt in the trash. One more faint gray smudge on the inside of the sliding glass door frame. Every time I brought it up, I got the same responses. You're paranoid. You're exhausted. You're making me the bad guy. The night I decided to buy the nanny cams, I was sitting on the living room couch with Nia asleep on my chest. The soft white noise machine humming in the background. Loretta had gone to bed. Marcus was in the second bedroom, door closed, on yet another late-night call. The TV was on, muted. Some crime show where the detective always had the right evidence at the right time. I looked down at Nia's face. She twitched in her sleep, her tiny mouth working like she was still dreaming about a bottle. I can't argue you into safety, I whispered to her. I'm done arguing. I opened my laptop. I didn't search for spy gear or how to catch your mother-in-law lying. I started with something softer. Nanny cams for infants. Hidden camera to make sure babysitter isn't smoking. It was amazing how quickly the internet delivered exactly what I had in my head but hadn't been able to say out loud. There were cameras that looked like chargers. Cameras disguised as clocks, smoke detectors, picture frames. Some were cheap. Some were ridiculously expensive. All of them promised live viewing from your phone. Cloud storage, motion alerts. My finger hovered over the trackpad. There's a moment when you know you're about to cross a line you can't uncross. Not necessarily a bad line, just a line that means life will never go back to what it was. I thought about Marcus, about how he would react if he knew. I thought about Loretta, about the way she said paranoid like an insult. I thought about Dr. Thompson's voice. You can't afford to be casual about this. Then I thought about Nia, gasping for air at 2 in the morning. I clicked buy now on 3 cameras. 2 days later, a plain brown box showed up at our door. I waited until Loretta went to the grocery store and Marcus left for the office. My hands were shaking as I opened the box at the kitchen table. Each camera looked so ordinary: a black phone charger, a small digital clock, a white plastic disc that could pass for a smoke detector. You're not crazy, I told myself under my breath. You're careful. I plugged the charger camera into an outlet in the living room, at an angle that quietly faced the couch and the doorway to the hallway. I set the digital clock on the kitchen counter, pointed toward the island and the stove. The smoke detector went up in the hallway between Loretta's room and Nia's nursery. The whole time, my heart pounded like I was committing a crime. I downloaded the app on my phone. I watched each camera come online, one by one. Little thumbnails showing the same rooms I walked through every day. Except now they felt documented. That night, I didn't sleep much. Around midnight, I was in the nursery, rocking Nia in my arms, when my phone buzzed. Motion alert. Hallway camera. Motion alert. Living room camera. I opened the app. The image was grainy but clear enough. Loretta stepped out of her room in a pink robe, checked the door to our bedroom, then reached for the nursery door. For a second, my breath stopped. If she turned on the light, she would see me sitting there. But she didn't. She eased the door open just enough to see the crib, then turned toward the rocking chair in the corner. The hallway camera switched to the living room camera as she walked through. I flipped to the nursery feed. There she was. In my chair. She sat down, pulled something from the pocket of her robe, and for a moment I hoped it was a phone. It wasn't. It was a cigarette and a lighter. I watched my mother-in-law sit in my baby's room, 5 feet from the crib, and light up like she was on a porch somewhere in the 1,980 seconds. She took a drag, then another, tapping ash into a ceramic mug she must have brought in with her. She had cracked the window an inch, like that somehow made it okay. In the dim glow of the screen, I could see the curl of smoke floating around her head, around the place where my daughter slept every night. I pressed my hand over my mouth so I wouldn't scream and wake everyone up. I don't know how long I sat there watching. My real body frozen in the dark hallway outside the nursery door, my eyes glued to the digital version of the same room. I watched her finish the cigarette, crush it into the mug, stand up, glance at the crib, and leave. The next morning, I saved the clip in 3 different places on my phone, on a hard drive, in a cloud folder under a boring name Marcus would never click. It didn't stop there. Over the next week, the cameras showed me things I could never have convinced myself of with words alone. On the 3rd night, Loretta sat on the guest bed with her phone on speaker, talking to someone named Sharon. The hallway camera caught her voice through the slightly open door. "You should see this place, Sharon," she said, followed by a drag from her vape. "All white furniture. Who puts white furniture in a house with a baby? This girl thinks she's so perfect. Little Miss Marketing Executive." She laughed, a low, nasty sound. "She trapped my boy with that baby. I'll tell you that much," Loretta continued. "Probably poked holes in the condoms. But it's fine. It'll make her life hell. Until she leaves. Then, Marcus can find someone better. Someone who actually respects family." My stomach nodded hearing that last word. Family. Another day, the kitchen camera caught her going through my purse, my laptop bag, and then my mail. She opened a bill, frowned at the amount, then put it back exactly where she'd found it. Like she wanted me to find it later and wonder. She opened a small bottle of skincare serum I kept by the sink, one of the last nice things I'd bought for myself before getting pregnant. She sniffed it, wrinkled her nose, and poured the contents straight down the drain. Then, almost as an afterthought, she went to the coat closet, pulled out 2 of my work blazers, and cut small, neat slits in the backs where I wouldn't notice until I put them on. But the worst clip wasn't about cigarettes or clothes. It was the one where she went to the medicine cabinet. It was afternoon. The apartment was quiet. Marcus was at work. I was at a pediatrician appointment with Nia. The kitchen camera saw Loretta open the cabinet over the microwave, pull out my prescription bottle of sleep aids, tiny white pills my doctor had given me for nights, when my mind refused to shut off. She popped 2 into her hand, crushed them with the back of a spoon, and dumped the powder into my favorite coffee mug, the one with my name on it. The camera had no sound up close, but a minute later the hallway feed caught her in the guest room on the phone, crying. "Marcus. Honey." She sobbed into the receiver. "I don't know what to do. Danielle is getting worse. She screamed at me today, called me a worthless old hag in front of the baby. I'm scared of her. I think she's having some kind of breakdown." I hit pause on the video. That timestamp? I checked my calendar. I had been across town at that exact time, filling out forms at the pediatrician's office. Loretta wasn't just lying about the smoke. She was building a case. A careful, deliberate story in which I was the unstable, dangerous one. The good thing about people who think they're smarter than everyone else is that they tend to forget about cameras when they're the ones holding the phone. By the end of that week, I had hours of footage. Cigarettes in the nursery, vaping in the hallway, sabotaged clothes, drugged coffee, fake phone calls, the shape of a pattern. Discredit me, exhaust me, make me look crazy, make me doubt myself. I sent everything to my older sister, Tasha, in Raleigh. She called me that night, her voice tight. "Danny," she said. "You can't stay there." "I know," I whispered, careful not to be overheard. "But I can't just grab Nia and run. Marcus owns this place. I'm on maternity leave with no income. If I disappear, they'll paint me as the unstable mom who kidnapped her own child." "You need a lawyer," Tasha said. "Like, yesterday, a friend of a friend, another black woman in Philly, texted me a name the next day. Cheryl Lawson. She handled my cousin's divorce," the text said. "She does not play." I made an appointment. Cheryl's office was on a high floor in a building downtown, all glass and quiet hallways. She was in her 50s, with close-cropped hair, dark glasses, and the kind of calm energy that makes you feel both seen and slightly nervous. She let me talk. I told her about the smoke, the NICU, the gaslighting, the hospital trips. Then I opened my laptop and showed her the videos. For 30 minutes, Cheryl watched in silence. Loretta smoking over the crib. Loretta on speakerphone talking about trapping my boy. The scissors sliding through the fabric of my blazer. The white powder dissolving into my coffee. The false tears on the phone with Marcus. When the last video ended, Cheryl leaned back in her chair and folded her hands. "Danielle," she said slowly, "you need to leave this man. Not next year. Not when it's convenient. You need to start planning your exit now. And we are going to make sure you and your daughter are protected when you do." "What can I even get?" I asked. My voice sounded thin to my own ears. "The condo is in his name. I've been on leave. Financially weak here." "You're not weak," she said. "You're in danger." "That's different." Then she laid it out. We would file for divorce. We would ask for emergency custody of Nia, based on documented endangerment and abuse. We would request a protective order against both Marcus and Loretta. We would pursue a civil suit for emotional distress, medical bills, lost wages. "As for the condo," Cheryl said, tapping a file, "Pennsylvania is an equitable distribution state. He bought it before the marriage, yes. But you contributed during the marriage. You carried his child. You managed the home. And he allowed his mother to endanger your baby and assault you by proxy. Judges don't like that." Tears sprang to my eyes. It wasn't about the condo itself. It was about not walking away with nothing after everything. "There's one more thing I want you to do," Cheryl said. "Call your sister back. Set up a code word. Something simple. If you ever feel like things are escalating, and you can't safely call the police yourself, you text that word to her. She calls 911, tells them there's a domestic situation, and heads your way." We picked Red Alert. Simple. Obvious enough to me, meaningless to anyone snooping. I left that office with a folder under my arm and a different spine inside my body. I wasn't just a hysterical new mom anymore. I was someone with evidence. A lawyer. And a plan. Over the next week, Tasha booked a flight from Raleigh to Philly for a Friday in November. Cheryl started drafting the divorce petition and emergency custody motion. I backed up every video to multiple cloud accounts, labeled with boring names. I wrote an email to Marcus, explaining everything, saved it in drafts. I started packing a small bag for Nia and me. A few outfits, her medical records, copies of my ID, the flash drive with the videos. I tucked it into the back of her nursery closet, behind a box of diapers. Standing in that quiet room, looking at the packed bag and the crib where my daughter slept, I told myself I had thought of everything. I had a lawyer. I had proof. I had a sister in my corner, and a code word that could bring the police to my door. What I didn't understand yet was how dangerous a man can become when he feels control slipping out of his hands. That lesson would come on the very day I planned to leave. The Friday I planned to leave started off almost quiet. The sky over Philadelphia was that flat November gray that makes the whole city feel like it's holding its breath. From our 23rd floor windows, I could see people in coats hurrying along the sidewalks, cars creeping through traffic, life going on like normal. Inside our apartment, nothing was normal. I had already fed Nia and laid her down for her morning nap. She was almost 4 months old by then, bigger than the NICU days but still small, still fragile in my eyes. I watched her chest rise and fall for a long minute before I turned to the real work of the day, leaving. My sister Tasha was in town, staying at a hotel a few blocks away so Loretta wouldn't know she was there. Shed texted me at 7 is greater than I'm nearby. Cars gassed up. You say the word, we're gone. Love you. My lawyer, Cheryl, had the divorce petition and emergency custody paperwork ready to file. We'd chosen this Friday because Marcus would be working from home in the morning and at the office in the afternoon. The plan was simple. Wait until he left. Send the email from my drafts folder. Text Tasha. Call a rideshare to the airport. Fly to Raleigh to stay with her until the first court date. I'd packed a small duffel for Nia and me and hidden it in the back of her nursery closet, behind a box of extra wipes. Diapers. Formula. A few baby outfits. Copies of Nia's medical records. My passport. A flash drive with every video clip from the nanny cams. I thought I had accounted for everything. Around 10 o'clock, Marcus shut his laptop and said he needed to take a long call in the bedroom where it was quieter. Loretta was in the kitchen, making coffee, and humming along to a gospel station on her phone. The apartment smelled like hazelnut creamer and whatever perfume Shed decided to drown herself in that morning. I went to the nursery to change Nia and freshen up the diaper bag. The room was calm, dim, the white noise machine soft in the background. I changed her, kissed her forehead, and laid her back in the crib for another short nap. For the first time that day, I exhaled. We were so close. I stepped into the hallway and froze. The smell hit me before anything else. Not faint. Not maybe. Not could that be coming from the neighbors? This was sharp and acrid and recent. Cigarette smoke. My body reacted before my brain did. I followed the smell down the hallway. It got stronger as I moved. Not toward the living room or the balcony, but back toward the nursery. No. I pushed the door open. Loretta was sitting in the rocking chair by the window, the same chair where I fed and burped Nia. She had one leg crossed over the other, her pink robe draped around her, and a lit cigarette between 2 fingers. A mug sat on the floor beside her, already holding a little mound of ash. The crib was less than 6 feet away. For a second, everything in me went quiet. Then the sound came back in a rush, my own heartbeat, the faint whoosh of the white noise machine, the hiss of the cigarette as she took another drag. Loretta, I said. My voice came out low and even. Get out of this room. Right now. She looked up, annoyed, as if I'd interrupted her in the middle of a TV show. Oh, Danielle, she said, exhaling smoke toward the cracked window. I thought you were downstairs. Nia sleeps in here, I said. You know that. She was in the hospital, because of smoke. Dr. Thompson told us no smoke. Not anywhere. Not ever. The window's open, she said, gesturing lazily. You're being dramatic. Something in my chest snapped. This is not drama, I said. This is my child's lungs. Get out. Now. Loretta uncrossed her legs, stood up, and flicked the cigarette into the mug. Then she walked right past me, her perfume and smoke wrapping around me like a cloud. This isn't your apartment, sweetheart, she said over her shoulder. It's my son's. If anyone's leaving, it's you. There are moments when you feel yourself step over an invisible line inside your own life. This was one of them. I followed her down the hallway into the living room. Marcus, she called, her voice shifting instantly into something higher, thinner, more fragile. Marcus, your wife is having another one of her episodes. He came out of the bedroom, still holding his phone, his expression already pinched with irritation. What now? He asked. Your mother was smoking in the nursery, I said. I kept my voice steady on purpose. Right next to Nia's crib. I walked in and saw her. This has to stop. That is not true, Loretta said immediately, hand flying to her chest. I was in the guest room. She barged in here like a crazy person, accusing me of things again. I could feel the old dynamic trying to pull me under the gaslighting. She said, the triangle where I was always the one left standing alone. But I hadn't spent weeks recording my own life for nothing. Okay, I said quietly. Let's not argue. I pulled my phone from my back pocket, opened the nanny cam app, and tapped the most recent clip from the nursery. The three of us stood in our living room, looking down at that little screen. The timestamp, 10 minutes ago. The image, Loretta in the rocking chair, cigarette between her fingers, smoke rising in lazy gray curls toward the air vent. I tilted the phone toward Marcus. Is that still me making things up? I asked. For a moment, his face went through a series of expressions: surprise, confusion, realization. If the story had ended differently, maybe that's where he would have turned to his mother and said, "What did you do?" But that's not the story I'm telling. His eyes flicked from the screen to my face, and what settled there wasn't outrage at Loretta. It was anger at me. "You put cameras in our home?" he said slowly. "You've been recording us? Spying on my mother?" "In my home," I said. "To protect our daughter. To protect myself." "You weren't listening to me, Marcus. You had no right," he snapped. "You violated our privacy." "Pennsylvania is a one-party consent state," I said. Cheryl's voice echoed in my head. "I have every right to record in my own home. Especially when our daughter's safety is at stake." He took a step closer. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. "All this time," he said, voice rising, "you've been playing detective instead of trying to fix this family. You've been looking for reasons to attack my mother. Your mother has been smoking in Nia's room," I said, forcing each word out evenly. "She's been drugging my coffee. She's been destroying my things. I have it all on video, Marcus. Every cigarette. Every lie." "You're insane," Loretta hissed from behind him. "You really are." I took a breath. "I'm done," I said. "I'm leaving this apartment today. And I'm taking Nia with me." "The hell you are," Marcus said. He grabbed my arm. His fingers dug into my skin harder than they ever had before. "You're not taking my daughter anywhere," he said. "You're unstable. You've been spying on us, poisoning this house. I'm not letting you run off and make me look like some abuser." "You don't need my help for that," I said, yanking my arm free. "Let go of me, Marcus." He stepped back, breathing hard. Behind him, Loretta's voice slid into the space like a knife. "Teach her some respect, son." Time did something strange right then. It felt like it slowed down and sped up at the same time. Marcus turned away from me and walked toward the kitchen. For a split second, I thought he was leaving the room to cool off. I turned toward the hallway, toward the nursery, toward Nia. I heard the soft click of the electric kettle being lifted from its base. When I turned back, he was already crossing the living room, the stainless steel kettle in his hand, steam still curling from the spout. "Marcus," I said. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "What are you doing?" He didn't answer. He took another step. Then another. Nia started to stir in her crib, a soft, questioning cry. I did the only thing my body knew how to do. I moved toward the sound of my baby, scooping her up into my arms, pressing her against my chest. I turned my body, putting my back between them and her. "You stink worse than smoke," Marcus said, his voice low and flat. "You're a terrible mother, Danielle." The kettle tipped. The water hit me across the shoulder blades first, then cascaded down my back, my left arm, my side. It was scalding, instant, total. Pain exploded across my skin, so bright it was almost a sound. I felt my knees buckle. My fingers dug into Nia's blanket as I fought not to drop her. I don't remember falling, but I remember the floor against my hand, the way my vision went white at the edges. I remember Nia's shrill cry right by my ear. I remember the smell of my own skin, sharp and terrible. I looked up through tears to see Marcus standing over me, kettle still in his hand. His eyes suddenly wide with horror, like he'd just realized where he was and what had done. "Oh God," he said. "Danielle," I didn't mean behind him. Loretta's face swam into focus. She wasn't smiling anymore, but she wasn't horrified, either. There was something in her eyes that looked an awful lot like satisfaction. "Stop being so dramatic," she said. If this had happened a month earlier, that might have been the end of the scene. Me on the floor, them rewriting the story over and over, until even I didn't trust my own memory. But this wasn't a month earlier. My phone was still in my pocket. Before I'd walked into the living room to confront Loretta, I had sent a text to Tasha with one simple phrase: "Is greater than red alert." By the time the kettle left its base, my sister was already on the phone with 911. and a patrol car was on its way to our building. I heard the pounding on the door before I saw the lights. "Philadelphia police," a voice shouted. "Open the door." Tasha's voice cut through the fog in my head. "Danielle," she yelled. "I'm right here. Open the door." I couldn't move. Marcus did. He set the kettle down slowly, like it might explode, and went to the door. The officers took in the scene in one sweep. A woman on the floor, clothes soaked, skin reddening and blistering across her back and arm. A crying infant. A man with wet kettle in the kitchen. An older woman standing to the side, hands half raised like she'd been caught in the middle of a performance. "Mom, are you hurt?" one of the officers asked, kneeling beside me. He poured boiling water on me. I said. My voice shook, but the words came out clear. My husband poured boiling water on my back while I was holding our baby. "Sir, put your hands where I can see them," the other officer said to Marcus. "Step away from the kettle. This is a misunderstanding," Marcus said quickly. "She's been unstable for weeks." I have it on video," Tasha cut in. She was standing just inside the doorway now, her face pale but her voice steady. She held up her phone, screen glowing. "The nanny cam. I saw everything. I've been recording since she texted me." The officer beside me looked from my burned skin to Marcus, then to Loretta. "Mom," he said to me, "do you want to press charges?" I met Marcus' eyes. For the first time since I'd known him, I saw someone I didn't recognize at all. "Yes," I said. "I want him arrested." In the chaos that followed the handcuffs clicking around Marcus' wrists, the officer separating Loretta to take her statement, the paramedics arriving with a stretcher, the pain sharpened and then blurred. They cut my shirt away. They covered my burns with wet dressings that hurt almost as much as the water had. They strapped me down and took Nia into Tasha's arms. As they wheeled me into the elevator, the apartment ceiling disappearing above me, I had one last clear thought. They thought they were breaking me. What they were really doing was giving me every piece of proof I would need to finally get free. In the next part of this story, I'll tell you what happened after that elevator ride, about the burn unit, the courtrooms, the sentences, and the life I had to build from the ashes of the one I left behind. The elevator doors closed over Marcus' face, over Loretta's voice, over the life I had been trying to hold together with excuses and hope. By the time we reached the ground floor, the shock had started to wear off, and the pain took its place. It was sharp and raw, and everywhere. Every bump of the gurney sent a new wave through my back and arm. I remember staring at the ceiling tiles and focusing on one thought. Nia didn't get burned. Nia didn't get burned. Tasha walked beside the stretcher, Nia in her arms, wrapped in a blanket. Nia was still crying, her little face red and furious, but she was whole. That was all that mattered. At Liberty General Hospital, they took me straight to the burn unit. You don't think about burn units until you need one. Bright lights, the smell of antiseptic, the sound of people trying not to scream. A nurse cut away the rest of my clothes while another started an IV. A doctor, not Dr. Thompson but another woman with practiced, kind eyes, examined my back and arm. "Second-degree burns," she said. "Some deep, partial thickness. We're going to clean these and dress them. You'll be with us for a while." "Is my baby okay?" I asked. "She's fine," the nurse said, glancing at Tasha with Nia. "No burns on her. That's the good part. The cleaning was worse than the burn. They call it debriding, removing dead and damaged tissue so the skin underneath can heal. They gave me pain medication, but there's only so much it can do when somebody is carefully wiping away pieces of you." I gripped the side of the hospital bed until my knuckles hurt and tried not to focus on the sound of my own sobbing. In the middle of all that, there were small mercies. Tasha, who never left for long, she held Nia, changed diapers on a chair in the corner, sang silly songs to keep her calm. She took pictures of my burns not to traumatize me, but because Cheryl would need them later. Dr. Regina Thompson, who came by my room on her break. She stood at the foot of my bed, her hands in the pockets of her white coat, eyes taking in the bandages on my back and arm. "I heard what happened," she said quietly. "I'm so sorry. This all started with the smoke," I said. My voice cracked. "I tried to tell them. I tried." "I know you did," she said. "You were right to push. You were right to be careful. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. It's funny how much it can mean to have one professional say, "You're not crazy. You're right." A day later, Cheryl walked into my room carrying a leather folder and a look on her face I had not seen before. Cold, focused anger. "How bad is it?" she asked, glancing at the bandages. "Bad enough," I said. She nodded once. "Good. That makes my job easier." Cheryl told me Marcus had been arrested at the apartment and booked on charges of aggravated assault and domestic battery. The officers had taken statements from everyone, including Loretta, who predictably tried to spin herself as the terrified grandmother caught in the crossfire. "What about Nia?" was my first question. "We filed for an emergency protective order this morning," Cheryl said. "Temporary full custody to you. No contact order against Marcus and Loretta. A judge signed it an hour ago. Legally, they can't come near you or Nia." I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been holding my breath until I felt it leave my chest. "And Loretta?" I asked. "She's being charged with child endangerment and solicitation to commit aggravated battery," Cheryl said. "The state saw the videos. They're taking it seriously." Over the next few days, while I learned how to sleep on my side and how to breathe around pain, Cheryl handled things I couldn't even think about yet. She filed the divorce petition. She filed for permanent custody. She preserved the nanny cam footage as evidence, backed by court orders. She dealt with Marcus' attorney, who tried to reach out on his behalf to apologize, to contextualize, to suggest this was a one-time loss of temper. Cheryl shut all of it down. "My client is not interested in context," she told them. "She's interested in safety and consequences." I spent a week in the burn unit. The pain got a little less sharp each day, replaced by a deep, constant ache. My skin blistered, peeled, and began the ugly work of knitting itself back together. The nurses told me I'd have scars. I nodded. That felt fair. When they finally discharged me, Tasha helped me into a loose, soft shirt that didn't touch my back much, and drove me to a hotel. Not back to the apartment. Cheryl had already arranged for a friend to help pack my clothes and Nia's things and put them in storage. I never went back to that 23rd floor condo again. The criminal case against Marcus moved faster than I expected. Maybe it was the videos. Maybe it was the photographs of the burns, and the records from the hospital. Maybe it was the fact that a respected attorney from a well-known firm had been arrested in his own luxury apartment for pouring boiling water on his wife while she held their infant daughter. Whatever the reason, the district attorney's office was motivated. 3 months after the attack, I sat in the back of a courtroom in a loose blouse and soft pants, careful not to lean against the wooden bench, and watched Marcus stand up in an orange jumpsuit. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically, he was still the same man, but the arrogance had been stripped away. His shoulders slumped. His eyes didn't quite meet mine. The judge asked him to describe, in his own words, what he had done. Marcus cleared his throat. His voice was rough. "On November 18th, he said, "I was in my apartment with my wife, Danielle Morgan, and our daughter. We had an argument. I became angry. I picked up a kettle of boiling water and poured it on my wife's back and arm while she was holding our child. She suffered serious burns and had to be hospitalized." The judge looked at him for a long moment. "Why did you do that?" he asked. Marcus swallowed. He glanced over his shoulder, maybe hoping to spot his mother. But Loretta was in her own legal trouble by then. "Because I chose my mother over my wife and daughter," he said finally. "Because I didn't want to believe what my wife was telling me. Because I was a coward who would rather hurt her than admit my mother had done something wrong." The words didn't heal anything. They didn't erase the pain or the scars or the nights I woke up sweating from dreams of hot water. But hearing him say coward out loud, where it would be part of the record forever, settled something inside me. The judge accepted his guilty plea to aggravated assault and sentenced him to 4 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. Marcus was barred from any direct contact with me and limited to strictly supervised visitation with Nia, to be evaluated by the court later if at all. Loretta refused to plead guilty. She demanded a trial. She claimed in every hearing that she was the victim of my manipulation, of my jealousy, of a younger woman trying to cut her out of her son's life. Her attorney painted her as a confused older lady caught in the middle of a marital breakdown she didn't understand. The jury didn't buy it. They saw the videos. Loretta smoking in the nursery. Loretta giggling on the phone about trapping my boy and promising to make my life hell. Loretta crushing pills into my coffee. Loretta saying, "Teach her some respect, son." Seconds before the attack. It took them only a few hours to find her guilty of child endangerment and solicitation. The judge gave her 18 months of probation, a hefty fine she couldn't easily pay, mandatory counseling, and a permanent no-contact order. She would never legally see Naya again. As for the civil case, Marcus Malpractice and Homeowners Insurance eventually did what big insurance companies do when faced with ugly facts and a strong plaintiff. They settled. We settled for less than Cheryl's opening demand, but more than enough to change my options. There was money for my medical bills, for therapy, for the income ID lost. There was enough left over to make starting over in another city feel possible. Not like jumping off a cliff. When the divorce was finalized, the judge approved a property settlement that acknowledged my contributions during the marriage and the harm I'd suffered. In the end, I walked away with primary custody of Nia, financial support, and something you can't quantify: the legal acknowledgement that what had been done to me was wrong. By the spring of 2024, I was no longer a wife, no longer living in Philadelphia, and no longer interested in holding my life together with other people's approval. I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, to be closer to Tasha. We found a small townhouse on a quiet street with trees that dropped yellow leaves in the fall and a playground within walking distance. The first night I slept there, with Naya in a crib in the room next to mine, I lay awake listening to nothing. No footsteps from an angry man pacing in the next room. No balcony door sliding open. No faint smell of smoke sneaking under the nursery door. Just my daughter's soft breathing and the hum of the refrigerator. I cried not from pain this time, but from relief. With Cheryl's guidance and the settlement money in the bank, I didn't have to rush into a job that would swallow me whole. I took my time. I found a therapist who specialized in trauma and domestic violence. I went to physical therapy twice a week to stretch the tight, shiny skin across my back and shoulder. I learned how to look at my scars in the mirror without flinching. They run from my left shoulder blade down to my mid-back and along the outside of my upper arm, raised and slightly darker than the skin around them. For a while, I avoided sleeveless tops, avoided swimming pools, avoided any situation where someone might ask, "What happened?" Then, slowly, I started telling the truth. I built something new, too. Sitting at a small desk in my Raleigh living room, with Naya playing on a blanket at my feet, I started taking on freelance marketing clients. A restaurant here, a local nonprofit there, a small startup trying to figure out what to say online after a PR mistake. It turned out that surviving a domestic violence scandal gave me a particular understanding of crisis communication. Within a year, my one-woman freelance hustle had grown into a small consultancy. I hired a part-time assistant, then a junior strategist. I rented a modest office space not far from downtown Raleigh, painted the walls a soft, warm color, and hung a framed print over my desk that said, "You can rebuild from here." Around that time, a friend invited me to speak at a community event at a fire station an evening about home safety that had expanded to include a segment on domestic violence and the impact of burns. I almost said no. I wasn't sure I was ready to stand in front of strangers and show them the map of my worst day. But then I thought about the women sitting in their own living rooms, wondering if they were crazy, wondering if their partner's temper was bad enough to leave. So I said yes. I wore a simple dress with a cardigan over it. Halfway through my talk, when I reached the part about the kettle and the elevator and the burn unit, I took off the cardigan and turned slightly so they could see. "These are my scars," I said. "They are not pretty. They are not poetic. They are just proof. Proof that what I'm telling you happened. Proof that I lived through it. Proof that leaving wasn't an overreaction, it was survival." Afterward, as people lined up to talk to me, a man in a navy blue uniform with a fire department patch on the sleeve stepped forward. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a calm, steady presence. He introduced himself as Captain Malik Turner, a fire captain and one of the organizers of the event. "Your story hit hard," he said. "We see a lot of fire-related injuries, a lot of domestic situations. Not many people talk about both in the same breath, the way you just did. We talked about burns, about how many came from intentional harm, and not just accidents, about the way families sometimes try to hide the real reason someone is in the burn unit. He told me he was divorced, that he had a 6-year-old son named Jordan who lived with him half the week. He didn't push for anything, didn't ask for my number in some awkward rush. He just thanked me for speaking and said, "If you ever want to come back and talk to our recruits about the human side of burns, my door's open." We did see each other again. First at another community event, then for coffee. Then at a park, where Nia and Jordan ran around in the grass, shrieking with laughter, while Malik and I sat on a bench and compared notes on co-parenting and insomnia. He moved slowly. So did I. I told him my whole story, start to finish. He didn't flinch. When I showed him my scars up close, he didn't look away or pitying. He just said, "You went through fire and came out carrying your daughter. That's the only part of this I'm interested in judging you for." A year after that first conversation at the fire station, Nia and I moved into Malik's house. Not because I needed someone to save me, but because we had built something solid together, something I trusted. Nia adored Malik and Jordan. Jordan treated Nia like an annoying little sister and a best friend all at once. Our home was noisy and messy and sometimes complicated, but it was safe. Safe was more important than perfect. 2 years after the attack, on a quiet Sunday morning in Raleigh, we were all in the kitchen together. Malik was at the stove, making pancakes in the shape of cartoon characters he absolutely could not draw but tried anyway. Jordan and Nia were at the table, arguing cheerfully about who got the bigger juice cup. Tasha was visiting for the weekend, leaning against the counter with a mug of coffee, telling a story about some mess at her office. My phone buzzed on the counter. The number was unfamiliar. The message wasn't, "Is greater than Danielle." It's Marcus. "I'm out on parole. I've changed. I've done the work. I want to talk about Nia. She deserves to know her father. Please call me." For a second, everything around me blurred: the sizzle of pancake batter, the kids' voices, Tasha's laughter. In the past, a message like that would have sent me straight into a panic spiral. Heart racing, palms sweaty, mind spinning through worst-case scenarios. This time, my body stayed where it was. I picked up the phone, read the message again, and felt nothing but clarity. Marcus had a right to his parole. He had a right to work on himself. He did not have a right to my peace. He also did not have a right to violate a court order. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Cheryl with a short note. "Has contacting me directly. Thought you should know." Then I blocked the number. "You okay?" Malik asked quietly, flipping a pancake. "I am," I said, and I realized I meant it. He texted. I sent it to Cheryl. "That's all he's getting from me." Tasha met my eyes over her mug. There was pride there. And something like relief. I looked around my kitchen at Malik humming off key. At Jordan trying to make a pancake smiley face out of blueberries. At Nia chattering to her doll in a mix of toddler words and nonsense. That apartment in Philadelphia felt like another lifetime. If you've stayed with me through this whole story, you might be wondering why I'm sharing all of this in a video, on a platform where people argue about everything from politics to pizza toppings. Here is why. Somewhere, right now, there is a woman or a man sitting in a nice house, in a decent neighborhood, telling themselves it's not that bad. That the partner who throws things but hasn't hit them yet is just stressed. That the mother-in-law who undermines them is just old school. That the gaslighting, the "you're overreacting," the "you're crazy," is love expressed clumsily. Somewhere, there is a parent being told they are paranoid for protecting their premature baby from cigarette smoke. I'm telling this for them. Domestic violence doesn't always look like a black eye and a police report the first time. Sometimes it looks like a mother-in-law in white at your wedding. Sometimes it looks like jokes about how dramatic you are. Sometimes it looks like a balcony full of cigarette butts and a baby in an ER fighting to breathe. If any part of my story sounds too familiar, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. You are not asking too much by wanting safety for yourself and your children. Document what you can. Screenshots, photos, videos, notes. Tell someone you trust. Make a plan with a professional if you can. A therapist, an advocate, a lawyer. If you're in immediate danger, call the local equivalent of 911. Your life is more important than your partner's reputation, your mother-in-law's feelings, or what the neighbors might say. Healing is not quick. It is not linear. My back still tightens in cold weather. I still startle at loud, sudden noises. I still sometimes wake up from dreams of boiling water. But I'm here. I'm living a life that is mine. I'm raising a daughter who will grow up in a home where respect is never taught with fear. My name is Danielle Morgan. I'm 40 now. I'm a mother, a business owner, a survivor. These scars on my back are not pretty, but they are my proof. I went through the fire and came out carrying my child. If this story touched something in you, I'd like to ask you for a small favor that helps in a big way. If you felt seen, or angry, or hopeful while listening, tap that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. If something in my choices frustrated you, or you see it differently, I genuinely want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me your perspective. And if you made it all the way to this point and still aren't sure how you feel, you can always just hit like so I know this kind of honest, messy story is worth telling again. Thank you for spending your time and your attention with me all the way to the end. When you're ready, you can click on one of the videos on the screen and keep going with another real-life story. Maybe the next chapter you need is waiting for you there.